Thank you. Good morning to you all. Again. So, once upon a time, there was a country girl and a city boy who fell in love and got married, which in itself was a miracle. And then, oddly enough, they became pastors at the little country church where the girl had grown up. And the pastor was young and inexperienced, but the people in the little church were gracious and kind, and they loved and cared for the pastor and his wife so well. And a few years down the road, and they had two rambunctious and mischievous little boys, and a dog and a rabbit, and life was good and blessed, if not a little chaotic. And the pastor and his wife, against their better judgment, thought, we would really like a little girl to add to our crazy family. And then, almost simultaneously, the girl found out that she had cancer and was pregnant. And most of you know by now that that girl is me. And I laid in the MRI tube that day, and I cried silent tears while I waited what seemed like forever for that scan to finish, to tell me if the cancer had spread to anywhere else in my body. And I'm pretty sure that that was the worst day of my life so far. That's pretty high on my list. But about a week later, I also miscarried the baby that we had so wanted. And the grief over that, combined with all the emotions, I knew I was going to cry, of a cancer diagnosis. Thank you. I tried to get all my crying out while I was writing this. We'll just say it was the smoke. But it was a lot of uncertainty, and it was really overwhelming. And I kind of felt like I'd been drop-kicked over a cliff, and there was no one there to catch me. But this story's not really about me. It's about God and the work He's done in my life, through these last several years. And I have been waiting almost 3 years to tell it. And there's so much that I could share, but I want to keep this brief because Hunter's here and he's going to give us a fabulous message and a baby dedication. And I will try not to cry, which is too late because it's already started. And a lot of these things that I am going to share are pretty personal and emotional, and we're very private and not easy for me to share. But I'm doing this because when all of this was happening, I remember reading Psalm 40, which is one of my favorites, and saying, Lord, I don't know what you're going to do or how you're going to do it, but when it comes to pass, I will sing and I will shout your praises from the rooftops, and I will speak of your steadfast love and your faithfulness. So if you haven't read Psalm 40 recently, I would like to read it now. Give me a second. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust, who does not turn to the proud, to those who go astray after a lie. You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts towards us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than can be told. In sacrifice and offering you have not delighted, but you have given me an open ear. Burnt offerings and sin offerings you have not required. Then I said, Behold, I have come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart. I have told the glad news of deliverance in the great congregation. Behold, I have not restrained my lips, as you know, O Lord. I have not hidden your deliverance within my heart. I have spoken of your faithfulness and your salvation. I have not concealed your steadfast love and your faithfulness from the great congregation. As for you, O Lord, you will not restrain your mercy from me. Your steadfast love and your faithfulness will ever preserve me. For evils have encompassed me beyond number. My iniquities have overtaken me, and I cannot see. They are more than the hairs of my head. My heart fails me. Be pleased, O Lord, to deliver me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let those be put to shame and disappointed altogether who seek to snatch away my life. Let those be turned back and brought to dishonor who delight in my hurt. And let those be appalled because of their shame, who say to me, Aha, aha! But may all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who love your salvation say continually, Great is the Lord. As for me, I am poor and needy, but the Lord takes thought for me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God. I'm going to pause there, see if I can get my nose to stop. Yes. Thank you. But that was written by David in a much different situation, but I could relate. All my life I felt like I had a boring testimony. I grew up in a Christian family. I had a close, loving church family. I dedicated my life to Jesus. Again, I have written in my baby book, I think somewhere at 6. But I remember again when I was 12 at Camp Alaka. It was pretty boring, like I said, blah, blah, blah. But life had just gotten way more exciting than I wanted it to. And I discovered that I am a very anxious, fearful, insecure person. We made it through surgery and cancer treatments and COVID and recovery, and then there was the possibility that cancer treatments would make it unable, or at the least unwise, for us to have any more kids. And I was a physical and an emotional wreck. And I went to my doctor and said, I feel terrible. Do I have cancer? What is going on? He said, I think it's your anxiety. It's trying to kill you. That's why you feel terrible. And I realized that I needed to work on that and to learn how to trust more. He said, I can give you a pill that will help with that. And I said, I think I better work on that first. And I kept hearing him whisper in my heart when I was anxious and I couldn't stop thinking about something. Do you trust me? And I was supposed to complete 2 years of continued hormone suppression therapy after my initial chemo and that kind of stuff, and then see what happened. And maybe the doctors would say after that, try to have a baby. But all conventional wisdom said no. And I kept praying and agonizing and asking God for wisdom and wondering, why had God put this desire in my heart so strongly if it was not to be fulfilled? And I even remember reading a devotional in my Bible about Abraham sacrificing Isaac, and I thought, well, maybe I need to sacrifice this desire and let it go. And I prayed about that, and I just kept hearing, do you trust me? And I began spending more time with him. I had a lot of time to sit and read my Bible, devotionals, books by Elizabeth Elliot. If you don't know who she is, she's a famous Christian and missionary who's written a lot of books about a lot of really good topics. Some Lisa Turkhurst and Ann Voskamp, if you've heard of 1,000 Gifts, a book that she wrote. And I began keeping a gratitude journal of 1,000 gifts. And it took me over a year to get those 1,000 gifts written down. But it really did change my heart and my perspective that there's always, always something to be thankful for. And there was each day or every so often when I was discouraged or confused, something, whether it was something we read in school or a song that was on the radio, would encourage me. Even the Slugs and Bugs Bible memory verse songs that the kids listen to. And it took me on a journey, and it really convicted me about trusting and not worrying, and what peace is, and true serenity, and joy, even in times of trial. And I have this little glass plaque on a really cruddy looking wooden stand that's older than I am. I have no idea how it came about, but it was my grandma Verla's, who had breast cancer 3 times, and ended up passing away eventually. And she gave it to her niece, my cousin Nancy, who also had breast cancer. It's been almost 20 years since Nancy had cancer, she told me the other day. And she gave me this plaque when I had cancer. And she said, I think you need this back. And it says, joy is not the absence of suffering, but the presence of Christ. And I remember it sitting on her windowsill all my growing up years. So that was going through my head. And then I had a new mantra. I haven't joined a different religion, but I had a new mantra for my brain when worries crept in. I will not let worry steal my peace or rob my joy. And then I was reading another fairly famous missionary. If any of you have heard Amy Carmichael, she was pretty amazing. She went to India and she worked with orphans and children, and she said in one of her devotionals to go from one day to the next, leaving the unsettling things with God, being free and whole and serene, because we are secure in our home. This is what dwelling in Christ and His love means. The people and the things about which we simply do not know what to do, we can commit to His love as well, asking Him to find a room for them. And that really stuck with me. And I thought, what does serene even mean? But then, in December, I have this written down in my journal. I had to go dig out all my journals from the last couple years and find it. It took me a while. This was late last night because I'm a procrastinator and I have a newborn, and I was going to do this 3 weeks ago and it didn't happen. But I found it, and on December 5th of 2022, Kevin and I were laying in bed and we were praying like we did every night, and this sudden thought popped into my head: pray for our baby. And it was weird because it wasn't like pray for the possibility of a baby. It was like a done deal. I had that feeling like, what? And then a couple months later, on March 6th of 2022, because I like to keep track of these things, I wrote down Serenity Joy. And this is what it said. I was standing in our room getting ready for church, and I had been praying for various people and situations, including my asking God if we should pause my treatments because it was coming up on 2 years, and try to have another baby. When the words of the Serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things which I cannot change, came into my mind, and I thought, And almost immediately after that, the name Serenity Joy. And I had like instant goosebumps, and I felt frozen. I've never felt that way in my life before. It was very strange because it felt like God was whispering to my heart that this was His perfect name gift for the baby girl that my heart has been longing for and hoping for. And I'm always hesitant to think that God is speaking to me and wondering if it's just my own wishful thinking. I want to believe and trust that this is God speaking to me. I have no idea how he will bring about this miracle, but he will get all the glory, because I have no way of doing it on my own. I want to learn what serenity and joy are in my life and rest secure knowing that God's got this in his more than capable and all-powerful hands. And when he brings this about, after the hard times and the trials that we have faced, it will be worth it. And the name and the lessons learned will be altars and markers for our lives. Because I had been reading about the Israelites and Abraham, and they would put up stones, altars, markers to remind them. Remember, God brought you out of this. God brought you from Egypt, and he's going to take you to the promised land. And I didn't feel like I was quite on the level of the Israelites or Abraham, but I could see the connection. And like Sarah, I read her story too a lot, who believed, even though she was way past childbearing years, and she laughed when God's messengers told her that she was going to have a baby the next year when they came back. And I just kept thinking, you turn mourning to dancing and ashes to beauty. And I looked up the definition of serenity, and it said calmness, peaceful disposition, clear, tranquil, serene. And that was often the opposite, exactly the opposite of what I had felt. And I said, Lord, this is what I want to learn, to rest in your presence and your power. But I still struggled with, was that real? Did I just imagine that? And over, God would whisper, do you trust me? My strength is made perfect in your weakness. And I said, oh Lord, I am weak. I'm pretty pathetic. And then I was asked to speak at a Quaker Hill women's retreat in the fall of 2022. And each night, thank you, there was a different speaker, and I was just one night. And the theme just happened to be Exodus, no longer slaves. And I had wanted, what was on my heart to speak about was no longer slaves to fear. There's a song called that. And it really had an impact on me when I felt like I was just crushed by fear. And of all the three speakers, we did not talk to each other. We didn't know what the other person was going to talk about. They all meshed together, all those different speakers, with no planning. And I remember thinking, wow, God. And I'm doing pretty good today, because when I spoke at the women's conference, Corey, my sister-in-law, was with me. And other ladies that I knew were there, but many that I didn't. And I was so nervous. I had foot cramps. Like foot and leg cramps. And the instant I feel like I sat down after that, they stopped. And I was like, so today I was like, that better not happen again. I was standing up there going, oh my gosh. So none of that today. But writing a message for the retreat helped me to reflect on all that I had learned, but I still had no idea how it would all turn out. And only Kevin or one or two of my close friends knew about that special name gift promise. And I felt like I was crazy, like we were crazy, even considering this, and that there was no one out there, no one else like me, who'd had cancer and still wanted to have kids. But I thought, well, if I don't follow what God's calling me to do, then I'm going to be disobedient, and I'm missing out on a blessing. And I'm talking with Kevin a lot and saying, am I crazy? And he didn't say yes, thank goodness. But he said, I feel the same way too. And I think that's a confirmation, because I was like, how am I supposed to know? What are we supposed, how do I know how God's will? And I spent a lot of time reading about, how do we discern God's will? And then in February or March of 2023, I did what I tell and what others have told me not to do. I Googled things. And I was thinking, because I was kind of discouraged and like, I don't know what to do still. And it said, there has to be other women, younger women out there who had babies after cancer. And what should appear as the first search result, thank you, but a study that had literally come out a week before that. And it was from Europe, and it said that women with hormone-driven breast cancers who paused their cancer treatment had no higher risk of reoccurrence than women who did not pause their treatments. And I was like, okay, God. I guess I have to trust you again. I get it. And each step along the way when I've doubted and wondered, I've learned to simply say, Lord, I trust you. I can clearly see that you have orchestrated all these things, and I know that you're working for my good and your glory. And it doesn't mean that there haven't been hard times or that there won't be any in the future. I can tell you that life with a newborn is a little rough sometimes, but it's a stage. And every time I look at her sweet, sometimes not so sweet, crabby little face, I see not only the wonder and the marvelous miracle of creation, but also the miracle that has occurred in my heart and life and mind. And do I know what the future holds? Do any of us? No. But like the song that many of us love, I know who holds tomorrow, and I know who holds my hand. And I say all these things so that, like the Israelites, I will remember God's steadfast love and his faithfulness, and I share them with all of you as a testimony, because I said I would do that. So I'm fulfilling that promise. A testimony of that, but also as a reminder and an encouragement to trust and to rest in Jesus, and to know that obedience to what we feel he is calling us to do, even if it's hard and uncertain, is always worth it. As our pastor friend, Kurt Heffelfinger, some of you might know, who is also a cancer survivor, said to me, "We are immortal until he is finished with us." So hopefully sharing this with you is an encouragement that hard times are growing for our faith. And I thank you for listening to my long testimony, even though I tried to keep it brief. And thank you for being our family and being with us today to dedicate Serenity and to celebrate God's goodness and his kindness and his faithfulness in the little things and the big things.
Thank you.
And I will turn it over to someone who's much more qualified than I am.